Eleni Myrivili is Athens' chief heat officer. Her assignment: to protect the Greek capital from an invisible but ever-present threat: global warming. The Mediterranean metropolis hosts the hottest summers in Europe, and in just a few decades Athens could become partially uninhabitable. Eleni Myrivili is on a mission to future-proof the city against the extreme climate. But it's a race against time. It's scorching in the Greek capital. It's high summer in Athens. Summer temperatures of around 40 degrees Celsius are becoming commonplace. A test of endurance for tourists and Athenians alike. At sweltering temperatures like these, Eleni Myrivili always has her water bottle handy. She is more than familiar with the heat and the dangers it presents, in part thanks to her occupation. Her position as Athens' chief heat officer is a first of its kind in a European city. She meets up with an employee of the Athens waterworks for a tour of the parts of the city you don't see from the surface, down into the historical underworld of Athens. This is where Hadrian's Aqueduct runs to this day. It's an underground tunnel almost 20 kilometers long, built by the Roman Emperor Hadrian. Eleni Myrivili wants water to flow here again soon, in order to help cool down the Greek capital. Engineers have already drawn up the plans.
They are planning to create 20 specific points where they tap into the water, into the green new parks.
The idea is to create a green belt running straight through the city. The environmentalists' proposals also inspired Athens waterworks to modernize.
The Athens Water Company is actually implementing works that will use sewage, treated water, for non-potable uses. In this whole culture change fits also this project with the Hadrian Aqueduct that is non-potable.
Grey water is mildly polluted domestic wastewater, which is ideal for watering green spaces. For Eleni Myrivili, the aqueduct project has been a great success, but the only way is forward, through the capital's heavy traffic. Congestion is one of Athens' biggest problems, contributing to the fact that its temperatures are often up to 10 degrees higher than outside the city. Extreme heat waves in Greece are almost always accompanied by forest fires, which are increasingly becoming a threat to the capital. In mid-July, there was a fire on the northern outskirts of Athens. Dozens of houses were destroyed in the blaze. Eleni Myrivili knows that time is of the essence. The anthropologist has already dealt with the dramatic consequences of global warming as chairwoman of the Greek Green Party and as deputy mayor of Athens.
But I decided I didn't want to be in party politics anymore, and cities are great. I believe in cities very much, and I think that that's where most of the problems are and most of the solutions are. So.
The solutions and concepts Eleni Myrivili comes up with are rarely found in the quiet tranquility of her office. Instead, she meets with scientists, engineers and activists in air-conditioned cafes around the city. And that too is part of the problem, she admits.
We don't have a lot of parks and green spaces. And we have a lot of old people. We have a lot of surfaces that tend to heat up. We have a lot of cars that produce even more heat, and air conditioning produces even more heat. So it's actually a pretty deadly mix in Athens.
The elderly are particularly affected by the hot summers, and they often struggle with circulatory problems. But Eleni Myrivili believes that Athens' decline can still be halted. For example, through the creation of more parks, which have a cooling effect, while also improving the quality of life in an otherwise hectic city. She is particularly proud of this small park. A landscape gardener friend laid it out inspired by Japanese gardens.
We have to choose plants that both have a lot of leaves and thick canopy, which are usually the deciduous trees, the trees that lose their leaves in the winter, but also do not need enormous amounts of water and can survive in difficult conditions. So this will also become a large tree that will give shade to the center of the area, and surrounding it, these trees are also cherries. Yes, cherry trees that will also kind of create shading all around this path.
The fact is, Athens has comparatively few and small parks, and there is virtually no room for new parks downtown. But the Heat Commissioner has an idea about that too.
We have to take cars out and make the roads into vertical parks, right, Lasso?
Very, very nice.
But every day, thousands of cars push their way through the congested streets of Athens. Eleni Myrivili is often in the middle of the bustle herself. Athens has pledged to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 40% by 2030, but it is questionable whether the goal can still be achieved. Surveys show that rising temperatures are indeed seen as a problem by most Athenians. But not all perceive them as life-threatening.
If I get dizzy or feel like I'm going to throw up, I just put my feet in cold water. That usually hits the spot.
Athens is getting increasingly unbearable in the summer. It's not like we have rivers to lay by, and almost all of the countryside around the city is already burned. It will get worse. The city just isn't made for it.
The hotter temperatures are an issue for this man not only because he likes to run long distances. Argis Imanouil is an actor and one of the most famous climate activists in Greece. To promote climate protection, the Athenian ran 2,500 kilometres from here to the World Climate Conference in Glasgow, Scotland last year. A heat officer like Eleni Myrivili is not a bad idea, he thinks. But the measures are too little and probably too late.
Don't get me wrong. It would be great to have a new park in my neighbourhood with a fountain I can cool off in on hot days. It's all well and good. But to be honest, it seems to me like giving a cancer patient an aspirin. I get the impression that we have already surrendered. We've accepted the climate crisis and now we're trying to somehow settle into it. That's pretty tragic.
The criticisms Eleni Myrivili receives only motivate her more. After all, the climate issue is increasingly a matter of life and death. Studies have shown that every additional degree above 31 degrees Celsius increases the mortality rate by 5%. Myrivili wants to make this an issue. But that is no easy feat in Greece, she says.
Here we had a heat wave that was the highest temperatures that have ever been reached in Athens. It was almost 45 degrees in the center of Athens, and it lasted for about 3 weeks, 3.5 weeks. So none of the Greek newspapers reported the deaths that were related to this heat wave.
But Myrivili pushes on. Her next appointment is with the Greek Red Cross. Today, Australian Red Cross colleagues have been invited to Greece to give a talk. In some parts of Australia today, temperatures can reach around 50 degrees Celsius. They explain how the emergency services there help particularly vulnerable groups during extreme heat waves. For the heat officer, speaking to those at risk is highly important.
Preparing people to be able to help people before they get really sick, so that we can tell them what to do, and if they start having symptoms, somebody's there that can answer a phone or can be next to them to help them so they don't end up in the hospital.
In the basement of the Red Cross building, the helpers pack their backpacks and prepare for action.
We have a mobile station, we have bicycle groups. So volunteers of Red Cross are everywhere, giving first aid to people that they have been under the sun for too many time. We also have services at home, where the Department of Health of Red Cross has data for people that they are alone at the house and they need help.
One of the mobile response teams is stationed at the Acropolis, the ancient landmark of the city. They're called in frequently to provide first aid to tourists who queue for admission to the monument in the sweltering midday sun.
It's very hot, I'm very tired, and I need to sit a lot.
Tourism is an incredibly important part of Athens' economy. And if the summers keep getting hotter, visitors might think twice about coming. Climate protection is vital for the survival of the city. This is especially true for the poorest residents in the city who suffer particularly from climate change, says the chief heat officer.
That's part of why we really have to focus on adaptation and resilience building in cities, because not everybody has the money to have a plan B when it gets really, really hot. Even today, you know, not everybody has the money to just go somewhere that's cooler.
Eleni Myrivili wants to ensure that Athens is still habitable in 30 years. She isn't ready to give up on her beloved hometown just yet. But at the same time, she understands the young Athenians flying the nest to live elsewhere.
My daughter is currently studying in Norway. And to tell you the truth, I'm kind of happy that she's studying in Norway. Because I think I'm afraid, I'm worried that it's going to get really hard in the south to be, especially in the summer months.
When do you think it would be time to declare the state of emergency?
Now.
The ancient city of Athens has survived many a crisis with countless wars and occupations over a near 4,000-year lifespan. And with Eleni Myrivili's help, it could survive the climate crisis too.